Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. As we start, can you say a few words about your current role and what's on your purview?
Sure, Misha, good to meet you, and thanks for inviting me to speak. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Bishop Fox. I've been on board for about half a year. At this point, I lead all aspects of our go-to-market. So uh, our field sellers, our technical sellers, our revenue operations team, our sales enablement team, our channel organization, all roll up to me.
I understand. So that's kind of if you look at your career arc, that's kind of a point. But kind of to paint the picture, I noticed you had experience with Red Hat and Palo Alto and RSA. So can you talk a bit? How did you get into cybersecurity sales in the first place?
Sure. I got into cybersecurity sales in 2003. Went to RSA for that, and my first role was in the BSafe organization, which was embedded cryptography algorithms, which were toolkits back then that enabled, in some ways, the S in HTTPS. It enabled the encryption in Oracle and this product in the old days called Netscape and Sun, and in satellites. And it was all very captivating to me at the time, because security was at a very different point, right? Like, there were not that many CISOs back then. And if you met with a CISO, you kind of kept their card on your desk as a trophy. Security was still then very much an afterthought. Most of the selling that we did was trying to convince companies to include security much more early on in their planning, because it was very much a bolt-on concept back then. So my first job in security was going through paper contracts that the founder and the founders and the CEO of RSA had signed for the BSafe toolkit algorithms, and trying to enforce those contracts, because a lot of companies had gotten the toolkits and were including them in their products all over the place. It was an OEM play. And I had the wonderful job of calling them up and saying, hey, you have a license for this stuff and you're including it in your software, but you haven't paid the royalties because it was a royalty play, or you haven't paid your perpetual license for it. So we need to come to terms. So it was a wonderful job, because what I really was doing was mapping the history, the previous 10, 15 years of the internet and software development in Silicon Valley. It was wonderful, right? Like, I got to read all the contracts from every player you can think of in the 90s and the early 2000s, and talk to them all about how they had built security into their products. So that was my first job way back in 2003.
It's amazing. I mean, you mentioned Netscape and Sun. It does bring back memories from it. It's just thinking back. It's incredible how the landscape, how fast the landscape changed, and if with technology. But to your point, I think before probably people could afford to treat security as a thin layer that they just spread as a bolt-on, an afterthought almost, because I think the threats evolved as well. Probably back in the day, it was the teenagers and hoodies. Now it's really APTs and state-sponsored, very well-funded, very well-resourced organizations. Probably in the past it was not the case. But I was curious, because you have experience of large organizations like Palo Alto, like RSA or Red Hat, and now obviously Bishop Fox is a very large organization in its own right, but it's a different scale. How does this experience of running a group or team at a large organization, how does it parlay to C-level role at a rapidly growing and well-funded startup, but still kind of a different scale?
Yeah. Well, at RSA, we were so far ahead of the curve from a technology perspective for the early part of the 2000s. And I had the real privilege of working with some of the thought leaders in technology and in security sales at the time. And I spent as much time as I could learning from them and really learning how those machines worked. When I started at RSA, we already had over 500 million distributions of Be Safe, right? At the time, one of the largest distributed pieces of software ever made. And then we also had our two-factor authentication, Secure ID, which at the time too was one of the most widely distributed pieces of security hardware. And so I spent the first 10 years of my career there. I was ultimately at RSA for about 16 years, but I spent the first 10 years of my career doing every job I could to learn as much as I could about how they built that machine, how they were successful, what the learnings were to avoid. And then we went on an acquisition spree, and we acquired companies like Archer and NetWitness, and other wonderful companies. And it was a great opportunity for me to get exposure to smaller scale companies that were innovating in the security space and what motivated them. And so I took a lot of learnings from those cultures and how they assess their addressable markets and what made them appetizing acquisition targets. When I moved to Palo Alto, which is, the preeminent security company in the world, especially when it comes to firewalls, one of the big attractions for me for Palo Alto was the just unmatched product development, brand, and customer adoption. And so my 3+ years at Palo Alto, I spent as much time as I could learning from those wonderful organizations about how they got to where they were and what they did, so that when I went to a smaller org, like Bishop Fox, we could think about how to get to that scale. One of the things I learned at Palo Alto was oftentimes it can be better to wait and not do something until you can do it the best, rather than to do it incrementally by paper cut, right? And
well, it's kind of like they say the pioneers get arrows on their back, and then but you wait for this to happen, and then kind of you follow in their footsteps, and without the.
Yeah, that is true. I mean it more in the sense of sometimes what I've seen organizations large and small do is try and be all things to all people. I call it the Cheesecake Factory menu, right? You go in, it's a 30-page menu, and they've got 17 different types of hamburgers and 14 different types of eggs and 19 different types of pastas, right? That can be very hard to be excellent at, right? So part of what I have taken to Bishop Fox is let's be really great at a few things, instead of trying to be all things to all people at all times. Let's really harness our expertise. So that comes to go to market as well, right? Like we have to be able to be excellent at helping our customers achieve their offensive security mission, which oftentimes means that we're more, as a sales organization, in a consulting role to say, hey, here's what we can do well, and here's what our partners can do well, and here's other offerings in the market that you might want to look at, right? But we're really looking to be subject matter experts for our customers so that they can turn to us for their long-term offensive security planning, and not necessarily just what we can sell them right now. We're really in it for the long haul with our customers. Everyone who works here is mission driven on offensive security. We're not looking to just churn and burn and get something sold. We're really looking to help our customers plan. And that's a big part of what I've taken from RSA and Palo Alto.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, B2B sales in general, and probably it applies to cybersecurity as well. It evolves with technology, with just the way the business is done, and it seems like every now and then there's a new theme that just captivates everyone. A while back, it was inbound. Everything was inbound, but then very soon people realized it was only a fraction of a percent converts and they qualified. Then it was all about large-scale conferences like Black Hat or RSA that we just a couple weeks ago came back from. Then it went away with COVID. It was all about webinars, driving traffic to online events. Now it seems like AI and ChatGPT is kind of capturing attention. So part of it is real. Part of it is seems like a shiny penny syndrome. But what is working for you now? What are you in your GTM? What are you leaning on the most, and what's effective?
Well, there's several factors that have changed over the last couple of years, especially in the last 8 or 9 months. Customers are much more closely scrutinizing their spend on security. They haven't done away with security spend, but they're less likely right now to invest in that which is not demonstrable for return, or isn't a defined high priority. So what's working for us is the tried and true application security work, internal and external pen testing work. Red teaming is incredibly desirable for us. Cloud application security is incredibly desirable, our Cosmos platform, because we can demonstrate immediate forward balls of your feet footing for the customer when it comes to visibility into remediation, visibility into triage, and building resiliency for their environment.
Mm-hmm.
They need that. We also have around 200 of the world's best offensive security consultants, hackers, right, in the world, who are incredibly hard to come by for any type of organization. Multi-billion-dollar banks have trouble attracting and retaining these folks. And that's what Bishop Fox and Bishop Fox leadership have done incredibly well, is find the best OffSec consultants in the world and kept them here and kept them growing. And so we're in very high demand for that reason. We're hard to compete with for that reason. And customers recognize that we bring that kind of skill and talent and culture of that long-term consistency of excellence to their environments. What they're not so keen on spending on right now is, at least what we're hearing, is more software. They seem to be saying, we know we have a staff and a people challenge. What we have an abundance of are products. We bought a lot of products over the last several years. We haven't necessarily, and we haven't focused on integration of those products as we haven't needed to. We've been solving a lot of point problems. And so what we're hearing our customers say is, I don't know that we're going to be able to bring all of those products together, but we're heavily scrutinizing how much of those products we actually need, how much overlap there is, and do we have the right staffs to manage those products, or can we outsource some of that?
It makes a lot of sense, because it's some of the themes that we heard at the conference, and the RSA conference, is that CISOs really don't need another dashboard with 20,000 alert notifications to look at. It's really, and which kind of goes back to the consolidation play, which probably, now will manifest itself in some of those large organizations acquiring, kind of filling up the spectrum of products that they're offering. So it's all. When we started the conversation, having one product where everything is native probably saves a lot of time and saves a lot of headache with integration. So it certainly makes a lot of sense. I know we're coming up on time a little bit, and two questions that I would have for you. One is, and again, it's kind of, we have a lot of conversations with executives, sales executives, but also marketing executives as well. And I think often the challenge that we're very curious about is, at any given point in time, a fairly small percentage of your total addressable market, 5%, maybe 10%, are showing intent. And when they do, things are easy. They're booking demos, they're reaching out, they're raising their hand in one way or the other, and their tools to kind of identify and capture this demand there on your website, or they're third-party tools. But unfortunately, oftentimes the flip side of it, the 80-90%, they're fairly early. And the kind of the tug of war is, do you leave it to marketing to help them on the customer journey until they show intent? Are you kind of more proactive on the sell side as well, reaching out and engaging with them? Where do you stand on this? That's the first question. And the second, if you had a crystal ball and you can see in the future, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, chief revenue officers of cybersecurity companies, what are the 2-3 things they will be obsessed about, thinking about, concerned about?
Yeah, two questions, but they're very intertwined. So what we spend a lot of time working on in close partnership with marketing and the CMO, and I meet regularly on this topic, is dialing in our ideal customer profile. We have a meeting on that. It's our second meeting of the morning every Monday. First meeting is a forecast. Second call is an ICP review for the previous week's dials and the previous week's prospecting and pipeline development activities, be them sales pipeline development activities or marketing pipeline development activities. Because we are constantly trying to increase, as you called it, intent, right? We're trying to constantly make sure we're talking to the right departments, the right personas, so that intent percentage is very high right away. It's hard. It's very, very hard to create a compelling event, right? Most companies typically have a compelling event or they don't have a compelling event. Our effort is to find the right companies and the right personas and the right departments who already have that compelling reason to work with us, rather than us try and create it. And we spend a lot of time analyzing our data and constantly refining that lens, dialing in that lens, and discussing it with our salespeople and our business development reps about what they're hearing, what they're experiencing, so that we can spend our time most effectively, because time is our most valuable asset as salespeople. We don't want to waste it in places that's not going to go. So one of the first decisions that I made here was to really change our ICP and up the revenue threshold and the personnel threshold of who we should be going after, and pull out those smaller accounts into a separate sales org that just focuses on those, rather than trying to peanut butter spread that around to all of our different districts and pods. So the answer to your question is constant refinement and inspection, and you have to have the visibility into the data, and you have to have the communication flow with your sales teams to make sure you're getting that refinement. As far as a crystal ball is concerned, I wish I had one. Is my first comment. I wish I could tell you what was going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. I can't, but what we're preparing for and how we think about the next 6 months beyond is we are expecting the macroeconomic environment to remain very tight, highly scrutinized by the FP&A organizations that ultimately sign off on the purchases that we're asking our customers to make. We're constantly trying to improve our messaging of the value that we bring. We're taking every deal on a case-by-case basis to try and make sure that we're solving the customer's needs, from both what we deliver, what they expect, and what kind of financial agreements and arrangements they need in order to get the programs off the ground that they want. And what we're also doing is we're spending every moment that we possibly can listening to the customer and asking them for feedback about what they're planning for, what they're expecting, what their advisors are telling them, so that we can be very in tune with our markets, because it feels like the American economy has been a month away from a recession for 18 months, right? And so it doesn't seem like we're going to get out of that mentality anytime soon. And many of us are kind of waiting for the next big shoe to drop. So we're trying to be very attuned to what our customers need daily.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's, well, to your point, it's, if everyone expects something, it's going to manifest itself just by the fact that everyone expects it. So it's just probably a matter of time. Brian, thank you so much for your time. This was tremendously helpful and very, very insightful. Where can people connect? What's the best way to?
Sure. Well, you can reach out to me directly. My email address is bdelemos@bishopfox.com, or you can hit me up on LinkedIn, Brian DeLemos. You can contact me there either way.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much for your time. This was awesome. This was great.
Thanks, Misha. Great talking.